Okay, we will begin Tuesday, August 4th, 2020, City Council regular meeting. Need an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay, consideration for the minutes.
I move to approve the minutes of the July 7th regular meeting and the July 14th work session.
Second. Any discussion? No? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Now, I suspect we have some public comment.
So we have several in here, and then I'm not sure if we have any on the Zoom.
We'll do the in-room first, and then we'll see if we have any online. Wade, would you like to start? Name and address, please, just like normal.
I'll be trying to do this without bothering anybody, it's easier. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, City Manager, St. Chief. My name is Wade Corkendall. You probably remember it by this time. 163 West Jackson Street, Cannon Beach. Three different items, but I'll try to make them short as I can, but get my point across. For Chief Schermerhorn, a suggestion. You might want to consider a motorcycle patrol on Hemlock during the summer months into the fall for future use. The reason being is that it could be very effectively used on Hemlock, where there seems to be increasing issues involving the public and out-of-town people and careless drivers. First of all, about the walkers, the jaywalkers, the people come out of nowhere between cars and cross Hemlock, particularly downtown, or will ignore the fact that 10 or 15 or 20 feet away is a good, valid crosswalk, but they'll want to go across the street right then and there to get from one side of Hemlock to the other. And so those of us who try to avoid downtown can do that, I suppose, but many of us have to go do things like go to the post office and other business. And these people are really asking for it. And I think it's coming to the time with the number of them that are doing it, that something should be done. And it just occurred to me, maybe a good patrol officer on a motorcycle during the heavy months might be a way to do it, because there's a couple other things. One is crosswalks. Now, there are crosswalks downtown, but the Oregon statute for drivers says that every valid intersection is a crosswalk. And yet, last week, I saw several instances of people trying to get across from one side of Hemlock to the other side, on Madison, on Van Buren, down in Gower, there is a crosswalk, and cars come buzzing by at an ungodly speed, and they don't even seem to want to slow down, let alone try to avoid the pedestrians that are there. And somebody's going to get hurt. And one of them was very pathetically bad because it was a young mother and a young father and two kids that must have been between 2 and 3, who were trying to get caught, and this Jeep came flying up the hill and aimed at them. And I even went like this to try to slow them down, and they went right by. They didn't care. And so my thought was, how do we control people who are legitimately trying to cross on these intersections? You can't do it with a patrol car very easy. But a motorcycle gets a lot better results sometimes with police officers. So that one. And then the last one. The further down south you go on Hemlock, the higher the speeds go. And pretty soon, yes, there's been a speed sign down there, and it talks about what the speed limit is, but that doesn't slow a lot of people down. And they're going up to 40, 45 miles an hour. I see police officer sitting by the side of the road with a radar gun might be helpful there. So just as a suggestion, for your consideration, if it's worthy, maybe it'll help solve the next problem. The members of the council, I urge you to take a look at the last Gazette of the 24th of July. The New Kid Pipes Up, authored by a fellow by the name of Rick Gray. I've never met the gentleman, but it's a very interesting article about day trippers and tourists. And if you haven't read this, I would urge you to read it, because it talks about what has happened in many areas with towns being overcome by tourists. You know, the biggest problem is, thanks to KGW and thanks to the Chamber of Commerce with this ad on OPB, it's magic here, and the beautiful pictures that the weather people put on Channel 8, showing haystack rock and the needles and the glowing sunshine. And more people are coming to this area on a daily basis. And they go home the same day. Unfortunately, while they bring their big SUVs, they take up the parking places, and they unload the wagons and their kids and the charcoal grills and the coolers and the other things, including windbreakers and chairs, and they haul them all down to the beach where they spend the day. And when they're done, they're back at the car where they dump their trash and they dump their garbage, because why take it home with them? And then during that time, they have not done a thing for the city of Cannon Beach. They haven't benefited Cannon Beach at all. They've benefited themselves. They haven't spent any money. They're just here for the day and go home because it's cooler, it's nicer, it is a wonderful beach. And the people who are doing this, they're getting more and more numerous because of the growth of the Portland area, including Clark County. We need to, as this article says, get some control on this issue. I'm sorry for the merchants, but I'm not sorry for the fact that these people are taking up a lot of parking, a lot of space, a lot of time on the beach, and they're not contributing much to this town. So I would urge something to be done by it. I have a few ideas of my own, which can be dealt with if the council would think that this is a good project to undertake, as to how we control tourism in this town to make it a part of it. Make it possible for all the people, including the residents, to enjoy the town. The last item is about fireworks, and I'll be brief as I can on this. I know the work session talked about fireworks. And I know the discussion was about banning fireworks, and I know there was discussion that said all fireworks. And I know, Mayor Stidle, that you were concerned in the meeting about the fact that, well, what about kids and sparklers and smoke bombs? And honestly, folks, if we're going to make any progress in getting control over fireworks, several things have to be done. And a total control of fireworks and a total making it illegal of any kind of fireworks is the place to start. A couple other things is Yes, there's only so many police officers. No, Seaside isn't going to help, Lawrence's not going to help, Clatsop County is not going to help. They all have their own problems to deal with. So, there is a fire department. Maybe if we could get some of the fire department members to be volunteers, spotters, looking to help the people that are on patrol, by telling them who's doing what where. Maybe the traffic information officers can be put to duty the night of July 4th to do the same thing. Maybe some people who are members of the community will volunteer to do the same thing. There are things that can be done to help the police department enforce the fireworks ban, should you make one. However, it has to be, if you're going to ban fireworks, you have to make it stick. Somebody has to be there to make the citation, to make the arrest, to attach the fine and make it stick. And those are just some of the things that I think have to be done before the next 4th of July comes along and makes it worse than this last one has been. So thank you for your time. I would hope that you would take those things under consideration, and maybe the citizens who agree with me will step forth and pitch in to help out. So thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Anybody else in the room that would like to add a comment?
There's another, secondary.
Good evening, everybody. My not given name is Buck Teasley. And I'm gonna give you a little history. I own a house at 138 West Taft Street. I've owned it for almost 30 years. Before I got it, my mother lived in it as a permanent resident at Tanning Beach for almost 25 years. So I don't consider myself a newbie in town. And so I had what I thought was a very simple issue. They started to construct a new home across the street from me, and of course it didn't have an address. So the first thing I did, I called the head of Public Works. And due to modern technology, I got a message, leave me a message. Well, where I live, which is in Canby, Oregon, I have 5 acres in the farm country. So when I leave a message, when I'm outside, I can't carry a cell phone for 2 reasons. Number 1, I have a hearing loss. And number 2, I don't want to lose that cell phone while I'm working. So I always leave a home phone number. So if my memory is correct, I called and tried to get a hold of her 3 times. But I'm positive, to be truthful, I don't think I left a message, because I thought this isn't going anywhere. So then I called the city manager, and I told him what I was calling about. And what I was calling about is when this home started to be constructed, when they were doing the excavation work, we happened to be down at our cottage. And in front of the home, a little tiny bit to the east is a PP&L power pole. And on that power pole, for over 20 years, were 2 signs. And I have a copy of them right here. everybody's welcome to one. So my issue was the signs disappeared. So I wound up speaking to the city manager. I gave him the address I lived in. I told him it was 2 houses from EVO Cooking School. And it was kind of kitty corner from Pig and Pancake Restaurant. And he told me that he would get a hold of the head of Public Works and they'd go visit this site. So about 2 weeks later, I got a phone call from him, I got a message, and they couldn't find it. I can kind of understand the city manager not finding it. The head of Public Works can't find the new home that's being constructed on Taft Street, which is really one city-long block in length. And the city manager and the Public Works director can't find it. I was astonished. So then I called and I finally got a hold of the assistant Public Works director. And I explained the issue to him. And he came down. We were coming down for a visit and to do some work. So I had a face-to-face meeting with him. And the first thing he told me was that there couldn't be signs on that PP&L because PP&L doesn't allow it. So I said, let's walk across the street. So we walked over there and I tell him, look up at this post. There's 2 holes there, one above the other, where maybe like a light bulb had been put in. And if you look really hard, you can see the outline of a sign. Well, his focus was who took the signs. And that became his total focus. And I told him I personally didn't care who took the signs. I wanted the signs back up. Because when the city cleared their property for this new home, they backfilled it all with rock. And the city might as well put a sign up that said, U-turns allowed. Because it's a perfect place to make U-turns. So, he's focused on who took the signs. And like I'll reiterate, I told him I didn't care who took the signs, I wanted them back up. So, not living in town, I waited. And then I called somebody I knew, and I asked them if those signs had been replaced. And they said no. And then before I left town that period of time, I drove down every presidential street. And every presidential street has two signs on it that say no parking this side of the street, which is the south side of the street. So, finally, I called and I left a message for the assistant to the head of the Public Works, and I think he's sitting here tonight. I left a message on Wednesday, I left a message on Thursday, and I left a message on Friday. And I got 0 response from my request had the signs been put up. And in my world, that is very, very poor representation for an employee of a company, or in this case, a city. In my world, he would have been gone, because it's just terrible representation. So, in the meantime then, I didn't know what to do. called the mayor and told him about the issue. And he said he would try to address it. And I have to thank him. On Taft Street now are 2 signs that on each side of the 4x4 post, it says no parking this side of the street. But there is no U-turn sign. So I don't know how many of you are interested, but here's the picture. And I have copies made. And it shows Taft Street very plainly. And it shows Mr. and Mrs. Teasley's driveway very plainly. But this was taken before a home was built. And lo and behold, on a PP&L post is a sign that says no parking this side of the street. And underneath it is a sign that says no U-turn. And as I stand here today, the no U-turn sign hasn't been replaced. And when I initially had the meeting with Mr. Mount, he proceeded to tell me how complicated the sign review committee went, and it didn't happen till in the winter, and so on. And I told him this shouldn't go before the sign review committee. The sign has been there for over 20 years. And now the city, during their clearing, has created a wonderful no U-turn place. So, I guess I would like to find out what a guy has to do to get a sign replaced that's been there for 20 years, and now the city has created a wonderful U-turn place, and the assistant to the head of the public works can't even return a phone call. So if anybody can offer me any suggestions while I'm standing here, I'd love to hear them. And I'd also love to hear why a sign that was there for over 20 years can't be replaced. I'm all ears.
Buck, I'm sorry, but we can't do a back and forth during the comment phase. That's part of our process, and that means we would have to turn it into an agenda item.
Excuse me, I'm having trouble hearing you. I have hearing aids.
Okay. We don't do a back and forth discussion during the comment phase. We will make comments during our good of the order if the council wishes.
Okay?
Otherwise, we will contact you at some future date, or we'll put it on an agenda item or something like that. So we appreciate your comments, and we've listened, and time will tell.
I appreciate it. So like I say, I have the sign, bonafide proof that the sign was there.
If you could give a copy to the secretary, we'll put that on the record.
There's a copy for everybody that wants one.
Okay, thank you.
So don't call me on my cell phone if you call me. You want a phone number? 503-632-4017. The sign has to be replaced. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so that's all we had for public comment here. Mike Manzulli has said he wanted to give comments, but did you find him on?
No.
No.
Okay, go ahead. Mike, you there?
Can you see me and hear me?
There you are, okay. You're ready to go.
Okay. So my name is Mike Manzulli, you guys, P.O. Box 650, Tolovana. I've been working on Cannon Beach water quality and sewage issues since 2001. I was the chair of the Ecola Creek Watershed Council for a decade. One of the reasons I stepped down from being chair was the frustration I felt partnering with a city whose administration continuously denied it had a sewage infrastructure issues. until a sewage release of some magnitude occurred. The last significant sewage spill before this summer's was July 2015 at Gower Street. Very much like the recent 2020 spill we just had in July, the cause was aging infrastructure and an inadequate backup system at the pump station. Also, much like the 2015 spill, the city has once again failed to notify the general public of the sewage spill. Under waste discharge permits, cities are required to take such steps as are necessary to alert the public, health agencies, and other affected agencies about the extent and nature of the discharge. The city appears to have alerted DEQ and OPRD, but as far as I know, they did not notify the Clatsop County Health Department, and the press release didn't come out till 2 weeks after the sewage spill, so the general public was not notified. The City of Portland's sewage response plan requires public notification and media advisories of any sewage overflow if the spill site has the potential for public access and potential health risks exist. Notifications are sent to all local news publications, all local radio and TV networks, and public health offices. In contrast, the City of Cannon Beach spilled an estimated 26,000 gallons of sewage onto one of the busiest beaches in the state during the summer, and to my knowledge, failed to make a single general public announcement or alert the Clatsop County Health Department. After the 2015 sewage spill, the City Council had a work session with Public Works, the Watershed Council, and the Surfrider Foundation. At that work session, the need for infrastructure repair and modernization of the redundant systems was discussed. It appears this was not acted on at the Matanuska station. At the work session, we also discussed having better public notification of sewage spills. It appears that was not acted on either. I hereby request that the City of Cannon Beach update its redundancy systems, its backup systems, at all pump stations so we don't have sewage onto our beaches, and revise its emergency response plan to provide clear public and health department notification requirements for sewage overflows, specifically laying out measurables and the subsequent actions needed to be taken. I'm no longer the chair of the Watershed Council. I don't really work with the Watershed Council anymore, but I'm more than happy to be a part of this. Our children, our dogs, our tourists, and especially our locals here deserve a clean beach. That's why we're all here. So please don't take this matter lightly. I know the city's staff has been working hard, the public works staff, but we need to put some money where these systems are flawed and get our public notifications out. There's no more excuses. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, anybody else that you know of, Jennifer? Okay, so we will close the public comment and move to our first action item. Consideration of lease agreement with Cannon Beach Academy. Bruce?
Actually, turn this over to Ashley Driscoll.
Ashley?
Hello, I haven't seen all you all in person for quite a while. So this is the lease between Cannon Beach and the Cannon Beach Academy. This was in front of you a couple months ago. At that time, we still had some questions about the Exhibit A, and so we decided to extend the current lease until August 4th, which is today. And we have in front of you a 3-year lease agreement. The city is happy with this agreement. The changes that we thought are in here. There's one typo that we want addressed, and that's on page 2 of the PDF. This is something that Bruce taught. Use of premises, the last bullet says leasee, where it should say leasor. So we're going to make that change for the final draft. But again, it's a 3-year lease agreement, $100 per month. The Cannon Beach Academy has limited rights to use the property only for the uses outlined in the agreement. They have the insurance and indemnification that the city has been asking for, as well as, proof of insurance. And the agreement is easily terminated if the city needs to with 30 days notice. So my recommendation is to have a motion to allow Drew to execute the agreement. Any questions?
Yes. I was just wondering, what kind of property taxes, does the school have to pay? That would be on page, 3,
On page 3.
property taxes / liens.
So one of the things that so in this case, I'm not aware of it. I will tell you that in a lot of our lease agreements, we will put in, just a placeholder provision about property taxes in case that issue arises.
But do they need to pay taxes usually?
Not usually.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the event any such taxes, liens, or encumbrances, are not paid or, are levied against them, we're deciding to would be responsible in case that does come up. But you're right, does not come up usually.
Okay, and then on page 4, it talks about default, and it talks about, not being open for more than 30 days, or let's see. I'm just wondering with COVID, if there's some way that the school can't operate for a certain period of time, is this being taken into consideration?
What section number is that?
It's section
It's
17.
default, number 17.
So if the premises are vacated or deserted by leasee, for more than 90 days, or if the leasee fails to perform any obligations under this lease, after written notice, so that would be the city has to provide written notice that we believe that they are in default. And you're right, I think under current conditions, if for whatever reason, they decide not to occupy for 90 days, I don't see the city, using this provision, because it has to be the city saying, we are considering you in default and exercising under it. So it is a good provision to be protective for the city. Right. But I just don't see us using it under a COVID type condition. And it is, our right to exercise that provision.
Would we visit it as a council if, that was an issue?
Yes.
Okay.
It also provides, under section 20, termination, if either party may terminate the lease at any time for any reason, with 14 days written notice.
Mm-hmm.
So, we've always had that in our contracts. So it makes the default for not occupying it for 90 days kind of need to be a moot point. If we had a desire to terminate, we have other provisions to do that. The point is, we don't have any desire to do it. We don't see any need to do it. But this is a catch-all termination provision that allows either party to walk away on a 14-day notice.
Well, what is the definition of occupy?
We would be the ones that would have to defend that and say that they are not occupied. So, again, in a COVID situation, we are in uncertain times. I would say if they removed all of their possessions from the building and were not using it or not visiting it, I would consider them not occupying it. In a situation where the governor says that kids can't physically be at school, the fact that, children aren't there, I would not consider that under these circumstances not
Right.
occupying it.
Mm-hmm.
My standpoint on this, if they weren't able to occupy as a result of COVID, that's the kids. It doesn't mean that they're not using, the administration isn't there, they're still using it for all their equipment and things. So, in my opinion, that wouldn't trip that, default.
That gives me a comfort level on that particular thing.
We understand council wants this to happen, and it's happening.
I have a question, on page 1, use of premises. talks about the use of Tolovana Hall, and it says, lease does not permit the lessee use of the area beyond the leased premises such as Tolovana Hall or the parking associated with Tolovana Hall unless other prior arrangements with Tolovana Hall are made. Now, as I understand it, there has been some use of Tolovana Hall. Are they required to go through the city and get permission to use Tolovana Hall at the time,
So that's how I read this provision, that they would have to get affirmative consent to use, those other properties. I'm gonna ask Bruce what the actual practice has said.
We, learned that they were having classes and taking children over there, and, we had conversations with Andrew from Tolovana Hall, because we had concerns about from an insurance standpoint, that, excuse me, the use that they had was different than having children, this kind of thing. And so, the last I recall was that we asked them to refrain from doing that. And so I don't know, I heard they were thinking about, serving food and using that kitchen, but I don't know if that ever did occur. The use of the parking, because the buildings, and incidentally, Tolovana Hall will be coming to you at the workshop next week for their lease. But, neither one of those leases identify parking areas, and, talking to Andrew and wanting to understand, from Amy, that's kind of worked out as far as the timing and the way that they do the letting the children out.
But I guess my original question was, would they need to have permission from the city to use Tolovana Hall? And,
Not the way that this is written.
okay, should they be required to get permission from the city? Especially since it says it won't be used unless there's prior arrangements with Tolovana Hall, and I don't know what that prior arrangements with Tolovana Hall mean.
Nancy, you bring up a good point, and I would probably prefer that, because, I don't know, for example, if Tolovana Hall agreed to, allow an activity over there, if somehow that wouldn't impact the city and our liability, somehow something was to occur.
That's what I'm concerned
Yeah,
about.
no, I think, yes, I think that would be,
So, a clarifying question, does the city own Tolovana Hall?
Mhm.
Okay, so then yes, how I read this is that, the prior arrangements with each other party that owns Tolovana Hall would need to be made. So, how I read the language, that they do need to get permission from the city to use Tolovana Hall as our property.
okay, and I guess,
That's not the way it reads, that's why I'm,
Unless other prior arrangements with Tolovana Hall are made. So the person or the entity that's in control of Tolovana Hall is the city if we're the property owner.
no, we're leasing it to somebody else.
Okay. That's the piece that I was thinking. So
Yeah.
we're leasing Tolovana Hall to somebody else. So we need to then make arrangements with that occupant to allow for this other use.
Yes.
So we can clarify that language in there I still think it's fine, because what it says is that unless other prior arrangements are made with Tolovana Hall. How I read that is that, whoever's in control of Tolovana Hall, if it's us that own it, that has another lease arrangement, then we are responsible for, working with those two entities to make that work.
Who is the other entity?
Tolovana Arts.
yeah,
Okay.
the Arts Colony. I just don't think it's clear myself, I just don't think that.
The lease states Tolovana Hall and means the physical structure. That should clarify the difference between Tolovana Hall being Tolovana Arts Association, or the group that is leasing the hall. And my assumption, and I feel like I don't know if we've talked about this before, but at some time in the past, we mentioned the fact that we would, it's still the city's property, so anybody using either one of them needs to talk to us, but it got so confusing that we just told Andrew to figure it out between the two of them. And I think that was kind of a loose arrangement.
I think it's a lease arrangement myself.
But this clearly, to me, and I agree with Ashley, this states that Tolovana Hall is our property, so they need to ask us if they can use it.
And I think that's what
That becomes our problem then to ask Andrew.
I think that's what it needs to say. I think unless the prior arrangements are made with the city for the use of Tolovana Hall are made.
So with the leaseor.
And we have a representative, sort of, from the academy, Barb.
Amy Frederickson would like to talk.
Amy, were you up there?
There. Thank you.
Rusty, can you
Yeah.
Can you guys hear
Hello,
me?
Amy?
Hi.
Yeah.
So I just want to speak on behalf of what has happened in the past, if that's okay with you all.
Please.
So in the past, what we have done is we have, our insurance covers the city as an additional insured because we were using that space for yoga, for example. But we in the past have made arrangements through Andrew. So I think I agree with whomever was speaking about needing to clarify this because it has not been my practice to go through the city. It has been my practice to go through Andrew. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear in that language because I that's not what I've been doing for the previous 3 years. And I apologize if I was supposed to be.
Okay.
Oh, I think just to cover us, to make sure that we know what's going on in Tolovana Hall, just they make a phone call and say, hey, is it okay if, or some kind of arrangement, just so that we know that something is happening between the academy and Tolovana Hall.
And so Bruce, we have another lease agreement with a different entity for their use of Tolovana Hall.
And that's on the workshop next Tuesday.
So with that piece of information, we are the owner of the property, we have leased it out, so we've given rights to, somebody else to use Tolovana Hall. So what we would need to do, and it sounds like in the past, we've kind of put it over to, the Canada Academy, is that we need to make sure that that we have the right to allow CBA to use the property that whoever's leasing Tolovana Hall doesn't have exclusive rights to use it. So we just need to craft some language that talks about communication between the leasee, the property owner, which is the city, and then the CBA.
But I think, in thinking about it, that, the city should be able to make a decision whether or not CBA can go to Tolovana or vice versa. Because we may or may not be taking on some liability, and it would depend on the situation.
Right.
I know at one time they were talking about cooking there, and if that happened, that was a concern from my standpoint. One of our facilities, food was being prepared for children. And then I believe carried to another location, or was to be carried to another location. So I think us being the approver of the determinants, that we should be in that position, if there's gonna be cross-use.
Okay. And I would just want to take a look at our lease for Tolovana Hall to make sure that we have retained that authority. So we have a couple options going forward here. We can craft language right now that talks about it. Again, I think I want to see that lease before we do that. The council could authorize Bruce to, work with Amy and Andrew and me to address that issue, and then you guys pretty much just authorize Bruce to do that, and then he signs it, or we work out that language and bring it back to you guys again.
Preferences?
I'm fine with Bruce and Ashley and whoever else needs to be involved to work out the details.
Yeah, I'm fine, as long as there's some language in there that gives us some protection for the,
I think we can do that. So not saying that there can't be any other conversation, but then when you would vote to authorize Bruce, I would just say that, you would authorize Bruce to enter an agreement with the CBA pending an agreement on, language regarding the use of the premises, something to that effect.
I think we want to keep in mind, when we take a look at the Tolovana lease, you have similar language.
Right.
With this rate, and that any agreement to cross-share any of the facilities require the city's approval.
Somebody prepared to make that motion?
Well, are we ready to talk about approving the overall lease with that? Is that what we're talking about?
I think so.
Okay.
May I also respond to the comment about the property taxes?
Sure, Amy.
I just want to make sure that, I wasn't sure who was asking that question, but we apply for a waiver because of our nonprofit status for property taxes. And that process has already been approved for this year, and we just have to apply annually in January. So I just wanted to make sure that someone knew that.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting us know that.
Yes. Sorry.
All right. Well, I move that the lease between the city of Cannon Beach and the Cannon Beach Academy be approved with the provision that Bruce and Ashley and Amy and Andrew will work out a language that will require city permission to use Tolovana Hall when the academy wants to use it.
Second?
Seconded. Any last discussion? Okay. Jennifer, can you call the roll on that one?
Council President Benefield?
Yes.
Councilor Ridley?
Yes.
Councilor Ogilvie?
Yes.
Councilor McCarthy?
Yes.
Mayor Stidle?
Yes. Okay, Ashley, thank you. Next item, League of Oregon Cities, annual membership. Do this every year in case we need to vote on what. I've done it in the past, and Bruce has been the backup, I think, if there was a problem. I have no idea what they're doing this year, so.
It's gonna be virtual, so I don't know
Probably.
how they would do it, or I don't believe they've got a slate yet to say these are the things we want you to decide on.
Yeah.
But we just need to designate a voting member of your council.
I don't mind doing it again.
Well, then I move that Mayor Stidle be our representative at the annual membership meeting of League of Oregon Cities.
It's just consent, so all in favor?
Yes.
Okay. We'll do that. That ends our agenda, but I believe we have some discussion items. Namely, number 4. Okay.
I will turn it over to Karen. You have received a copy of the, report on what occurred on July 17th. And, Karen, you would kind of walk us through what occurred.
Thanks.
Okay.
First of all, council members, Bruce, and the public listening in, I'd like to start by saying that as your Public Works Director, my single most important focus is to make sure this topic is not on the agenda for discussion. There's no part of this that is an excuse. I take it very personally, and I'm very proud of how my team handled the situation. Read the report, the vast detail in it, so I'm gonna hit the high notes. Feel free to stop me anytime you wanna ask a question as I go through it. Mid-morning on July 17th, which is a Friday, we had 2 pump station failures. The first failure started at the Ecola pump station at 9:45. That was initiated by an employee call to another employee. The second failure happened at Matanuska Station, which was at 10:16. That call was a recorded call into our dedicated e-phone, we call it, which is the phone that the dialer calls, that is for that single purpose only, to alert us of a potential failure or a high flow status. When the employee arrived at those locations, both of those locations had similar situations happening at the first assessment. That's detailed in the report, but it was later diagnosed by the electrician to be the bubbler instrument panel that was exposed to excessive air pressure. This happens when you're draining the water from the compressor, if it's not done properly. And again, that's in the report. The following several hours after these two incidences happened, almost back to back, were spent focused on getting those pump stations back up online and operating, because there were a sequence of events that is outlined in the report that was happening as a result of that initial situation, okay? So we focused on getting it back in online and in working order, and that took making some immediate repairs. Primarily, it was the panel that was exposed to the pressure. That was first and foremost. Second all was to assess the location and see if we actually had an overflow. At the initial appearance, we did not think we had. We walked the beach, as outlined in the report. There was nothing that indicated that we had an actual overflow, okay? And later, it was confirmed that we did. At the time it was confirmed that we did was by a call in from a resident that said he had been out on the beach and saw water coming out of the outfall. The call to us actually came in after the overflow had occurred. So we never saw sight of an overflow, we never saw evidence of an overflow. It wasn't until later, when things dried out, it became evident, okay? So once that was confirmed, later in the afternoon, this gentleman did not call me till 4, left a message. We took the action of reporting it to all the people that were required to under our permit that is issued to us by the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ. That was the first and foremost step that we took. We followed the protocols under that permit that is required of us through the state to the letter, okay? We went above and beyond that by calling OPRD, getting permission to get our equipment down on the beach to be able to do the cleanup, and so on. Later that evening is when all of y'all were contacted. I contacted Bruce immediately upon the spill, and so on, above and beyond the general audience of all of our business partners that work on projects with us, for the city. That included our committees, the Watershed Council, Surfrider, the public in that general area. First and foremost was to secure that site, protect anybody from being exposed to it. The greater press release for someone at home on the sofa reading their iPad was secondary to all that. The materials removed from the beach was taken to property, the city-owned property, at a gated, locked, secured site for handling. We pulled samples. We took pictures to record and capture what had happened, the current status and situation at that point. So let's talk about what we've done to date. We made the immediate repairs. That's first and foremost, get everything back online. We implemented a lockout tagout system that requires a manual lock to be removed before you can turn any of the valves, so the situation can't repeat itself. We did additional labeling in the pump station on site. We have these procedures documented, but we did additional signage and labeling at the pump stations that instruct the operator what needs to be turned first, okay? We've done additional training with everybody that is helping in the pump stations. We've looked at our routine maintenance, and this is associated with everything else that we identified when we were doing our live on-site navigation through all these events that were happening. We exposed a lot of other things that were not operating properly in pump often we're doing it? Is it monthly, twice a year, is it once a year? And we've tightened these up. That's gonna take money to do it, but we've already made those changes. We reviewed what we do, how often we do it, and who's doing it. We interrogated the dialer and the communications between the dialer and the system and the generator. The dialer is our signal to say, you have a problem. In this instance, that did not work effectively. The spill had happened before the dialer called us, and that's well documented. So we interrogated the dialer, we tripped floats, we tried to make that pump station trip and trigger so we could see what caused it not to call us. We replaced floats, we replaced parts of the dialer, we have dialer order that we're replacing. This dialer is proven to be sporadic and not working correctly, so that's done. Staffing, we noted staffing in our situation. That is not an excuse. That's a strategic choice that this team made together as a public works team. We posted this job initially, did not receive qualified candidates for our lead opening that we've had for a year. We decided as a team to allow one of our wastewater workers to study and prepare to take a level 3 test. He did that. He successfully passed that test with a very glowing score, I might add, and he accepted that position today. We will be posting a utility 1 worker vacancy for that position. We have given one of our team members a succession opportunity, and our team here with the city for longevity long term. I think that's the right thing to do. And as a team, we managed that vacancy for over a year. It was not easy. We had the wastewater team helping us, we had roads team helping us, but we managed through it. It's not an excuse, it was a strategic choice, and I still feel it was the right one. Let's talk about since 2015 that Mike Manzulli so eloquently highlighted. In 2015, we were spending $15,000 a year on I&I. When I joined the staff in 2017, I raised that to $25,000.
Karen, would you explain what I&I is?
I&I is our lines underground that we do camera inspections to make sure that there is no chance of infiltration. There has been implications that our sewer was infiltrating into our storm in years past. And I can sit here with the utmost confidence and tell you, you do not have that situation in Cannon Beach. We have challenges with our aging infrastructure, but our sewer is not impacting our storm. Pure and simple. And we spent the money to do the I&I inspection and the smoke detection to prove that fact. Okay. So we were spending $15,000 a year on that. I bumped it up to $25,000, and in the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, we're spending $40,000 annually to continue constantly inspecting our lines, taking the action to do the maintenance on the things that we find. That can be bellies in the line, it can be a number of things, okay? Same with smoke detection. Okay? We have spent a total of $163,000 on those 2 things to ensure you that our sewer system is not contaminating our beaches, okay? We've taken records that were kept manually in logs such as this. This is just 2 small logs that we keep manual on everything we do in the pump station. We've mechanized it. We have tied that to our IGCS GeoMove system. That's our asset management system. It tells us every water line, every storm line, every sewer line that we have in the city, the maintenance that's been done to that line. You can click on it, it'll take you to these records that are now mechanized, and it tells you everything we've done in the pump stations out in the field. That's happening now. That's gonna take a long time for us to get this, but we are already doing that, okay? The pump station that Mike highlighted on Gower, that pump station was completely upgraded 42 years ago. So that's a pump station that's in good shape, okay? That was a major capital improvement project that I highlighted in our master plan that's out there for the public to see. We've done multiple pump station improvements just on our regular operating dollars. Not waiting to get capital funding, not waiting to get grant money, not waiting for loans. We've taken action to it, and that's everything from repairing things that need to be repaired to replacing panels, such as our flight system, which is the brains to some of our pump stations that will lead us to SCADA. And that's a technology that we've identified in the master plan. We want to go towards that. DEQ wants to see us to go towards that. And that allows us to analyze and evaluate a situation remotely without standing in a pump station. They can do it from their desk, they can do it from a laptop, they can do it from home when they get a call and say there's a problem. They can dial into that as they're heading out to the scene. And I'd like to see us get there. As I say, we've chased grants, we've chased loans. We just got a verbal approval from DEQ that we have a loan coming. It's been in the works, and we've been able to expedite that through this incident. We need to look at rates. Our current rates do not keep up with what this system is needing as far as maintenance. I mentioned to Bruce that the amount of people that come here every year, you guys know, is putting a lot of stress on our system. In a period of time, we get a little bit of a reprieve, but it can only take so much of that high-pressure activity without addressing some of these things we talked about. So those are the actions we've taken to date. We took tests, and we're continuing to test the water in that area, both the outfall and where our spill occurred. The numbers are trending down, so we're going in the right direction with everything that's happened so far. And that's where we are.
And Karen, I might be wrong, but I don't think there was a requirement, and we were not told to remove any sand from the beach. I think that was a decision you and I made.
As far as the cleanup, yes, when there's a spill, obviously, that's usually what takes place.
But, yeah, but we did. We took, as it turns out, we took out twice the amount of sand that would have been required for the volume that was discharged. But it took us a couple of days to figure out exactly how much water could have been discharged. So there was some question about that.
Our quick and dirty analysis to be able to make our report to the state, we had to say approximately how many gallons, because we didn't witness it. What we had to do is look at the flows that have come through that station over the previous days and what we would expect to see on the days that this occurred. And it's a simple mathematical calculation. You're making an estimate, is what it is. Once we were able to do our post-mortem and interrogate those numbers and had to look at what Matanuska represents in the overall flow that hits our plant at the end of the line, that enabled us to say it wasn't 88,000 gallons, okay? And so that's why you see the difference in that. But when things are happening live and you're needing to report to the state, you err on the side of caution and you say, let's clean up for what the worst-case scenario could be. You don't want to have to take any more sand off the beach than you want to, or you need to, but you certainly don't want to leave anything behind that's not to be handled accordingly. And that's the decision to make.
And also Karen referred to where our focus was as far as public safety, and there can be no doubt when you're in that area that there has been a spill, that it was a wastewater spill. You're told to stay out of the area. That was roped off. I think you said you got the call at 4 and it was being roped off at 5. And notifications given to the neighbors, all those things. So anybody that goes to that site knows, stay away from this area. And it's still clearly marked.
We're very fortunate to have the business partnership we have with both hotels that are on either side of that outlet. They understand what our pump station represents, what the flashing red light means when it's on. We've actually received calls from them before the dialer called us to say that light's on and we are already heading out there. So they understand it and they're a good partner with us to watch over that. And they were there when this happened. We told them what happened. They told us they hadn't gotten any questions or complaints from their guests, and they appreciated us that was the immediate public that we were trying to protect from any contamination or exposure. And that was first and foremost.
We made sure that the hotels knew exactly what was happening as opposed to trying to sugarcoat it in any way. They appreciated that. Is there
Any questions or comments?
I just want to add one thing. I don't know if people give any thought as to what it takes to deal with, human waste, which we all generate, so we're all responsible. It's a very corrosive environment. It is a complicated system to be able to get water where you need it to go. I had an engineer explain to me one time, it was probably the smartest thing I ever heard. He said, water flows downhill by gravity and uphill by money. And that's what our lift stations are. And they've got to operate within certain parameters. There's got to be a lift station that has a capacity for it to go to as it works through the system. So these are very complicated. I'm very proud of the people that we've got. We're lucky to have really good people working on our system. We have good partnerships with local contractors, electricians. They know our system as well as we do. They're the ones that we call on. And so nobody is happy that this happened, and we're addressing system-wide the situations that did cause it to occur. But there is redundancy in our whole system. This particular situation, the redundancy was tied to the primary, so when it didn't tell us what happened the first time, it didn't tell the redundancy either. There needs to be separate triggers for that. Those are the kind of things you have to figure out.
I'd like to take a second to just publicly thank Cannon Beach Electric. They are our primary supporter of our pump stations. They know them like the back of their hand, and when we have a situation like this, they drop everything and come to us first, regardless of what we're working on. And they did that day, and it was tremendously helpful for us to understand what was happening in the sequence of events. It was crucial to us getting it back online and made the repairs that day. Didn't have to wait for parts. They made it happen.
Sending them to McEwen.
Yes.
And we call them McEwen, and they remove 400 cubic yards of sand like that.
Our folks that support our generators on site, Hawk, those folks, everybody came to our aid immediately. No one took this in a casual manner at all for 1 second.
Is there any special treatment that you have to have with the COVID? Because I understand that that also can be an issue with sewage.
Not to my knowledge. Robin, I can ask DEQ if they can give you any input on that. To my knowledge, we're not necessarily handling anything on a waste perspective differently than we would on any other day because of COVID.
And it seems like even though you did test some of the equipment, later on it broke again. So how often are you testing it, or is there just a problem in how old the system is?
It's both. And so when I talk about our routine maintenance, I think some things are done monthly, some are done twice a year, some are annually. We've tightened that up. We'll see it more frequently, and that's associated with cost. But it's also an aging technology. We have some of our pump stations that have technology that's almost 30 years old. And in today's world of technology and automatic dialers and alerts and being able to diagnose something remotely so that you're buying as much time and getting out there as quickly as you can, you've got to keep those things up to speed. And it's all identified in our master plan of our most important pump stations that we're chasing funding to be able to do some of those larger, expensive things.
As Mike suggested, would it be a good idea to get Surfrider and the Watershed Council and everyone together so that there would be a good communication line as far as any situation that might come up again for this?
We've been very fortunate to have an improved relationship with the Watershed Council, which Surfrider was a member of, over this past year to 18 months. We have a new chair, we had a new director, and you have a new leadership team here at the city, and that gave us a new start from what happened in 2015. It was unfortunate that, Mike decided to pull back from that, and that's his choice, I respect that. But we have a new start, and it's been a positive and productive one. They're very familiar with our master plan and the project, as is our Public Works Committee, and they're intimately involved in the decisions that we're making and the projects that we're choosing to chase money for.
So did they know right away about this, the partners that you have now? Were they all alerted?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have any idea how much all of these repairs are going to cost? And do we have it in the budget?
Well, our total is in our master plan, but, the first and foremost is a $300,000 repair. I'd like to make it, Madam, is that upgrade to kind of cover for that. It replaced a very expensive transformer there last year, to protect employee safety from some standards that had not been, kept up to par. And, to put that brand new transformer there and then leave it out in the elements only continues to cause a new piece of equipment to deteriorate. So that had to be done for safety. Now we did a cover on it. We finished the upgrades that we just talked about here tonight, and that pump station will be in great shape. That's the number one important pump station.
So,
If I may, that's a $300,000 project. It was pursued by Public Works, in particular Jen Barrett, and we were notified that we did get the loan for the $300,000. We got loan forgiveness of $150,000, and so we will be paying over 30 years less than 1% a year on $150,000 for a $300,000 loan.
so will that cover that will take care of that particular pump station then?
A good chunk.
All the problems that ran across and everything? When do you think we will get the money?
We are going through the paperwork stages now. It took us 9 months to get our low interest loan to replace our, meter module. I don't think we'll have to birth a child on this one. They're helping us reduce that interval, so I think we get it at this point.
Big learning curve, first time.
Michael brought up a point. I know it sounds like you did a great job in addressing the problem and fixing the problem, and you were working like crazy people, probably trying to get it all done. Would there have been some way, maybe of working with your watershed partners to issue just a general news release that didn't have to come down to this is what happened and this is what happened and this is how we fixed it and all that, but just a general alert that this is happening?
If I can address that, the answer is yes. In this particular case, we were just trying to go ahead and take care of the issue, but that's something we can do. Next time, we won't have a lot of detail, but yes, that is something we can do.
Okay.
People's natural questions are, what happened, how much spilled, what caused it, what you do. There were not a lot of answers to that.
Yeah, but sometimes you just need to just say, hey, folks, this is what's happened. We have no answers, don't ask us questions, but this is what happened.
So we acknowledge that's a better way to go.
Also, Karen, do you think you might need some more employees? Because it sounds like if you have more people to be on, especially with two issues at one time, I don't know how everybody could have done that.
Utility worker one position and see how, I think once we get staff back up to our normal level, we're gonna be okay. But thank you for asking.
One more, two more.
Okay then. Comments?
Other than thank you, Karen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
great job.
I appreciate the detailed report.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of my team. I have Marty here and Trevor, and they did an outstanding job.
They were the ones running around like crazy.
Well,
Yeah. They did a great job, thank you.
Okay, any comments for the status report? Any questions or concerns on that?
You're asking council for questions?
Hmm?
I have two questions. One is, have we started the summer shuttle yet, shuttle service yet?
No.
Should
No,
we?
we've not.
Should we be starting the summer shuttle service?
I held off on it when, we were, not at full capacity, but that is something that we need to consider doing.
Yeah, since we're now in August,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of visitors, so something we need to look at. And then the other question I have is, do we have an emergency plan in place for any natural disasters that might happen during COVID?
Rick?
Yes, we have many.
Okay. I'm not sure where to go from there, because I don't want to hear about many, but I would like to know a little bit about what we have planned.
Yes, right now, we have emergency action plans for all natural disasters that are in place, everything from, a Cascadia event to a wildfire. These natural disaster plans are not unfortunately practiced at this time, but they are already currently in place.
Okay, so if something happens, you know, a tsunami occurs or wildfire comes from the hills, we all know what we're going to be doing?
I think there is plans in place, and they were here even before I got here, but unfortunately, they are not exercised. And that's the whole goal of, I think, me being here, is to make sure that we exercise these plans and we develop them and practice them.
And we're not exercising them because of the COVID situation, is that right?
Slow down the process of building the infrastructure and getting the training process out drastically.
I just want to keep that at the top of our minds, because winter is approaching and, you know, we still have this other thing going on, and we have lots of people in town. I just want to make sure that we're on the alert, that if something happens, people know what they're going to do.
I agree.
One thing I noticed is that there were speed, signs, showing you on Laurel, or on Fifth Street, how fast you were going, and also that there were counters coming in on the north end. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, that's the TSP, the Transportation System Program, it was a grant that we've been pursuing, but we finally got this year. And, those are counters and cameras that are being used to collect data for that effort.
And is it over now, or how much longer is it going to be?
Karen?
Yes.
How much longer will the data collection portion of the TSP that has just started, how long will that be going on?
Yeah, it just started, we've got a ways to go with that, I need to check with Jeff, he's our primary contact with the company that's doing this for us. I just don't recall at this moment, I'm sorry.
George Vedder would be so happy.
They had, two of the cameras at First and Hemlock,
Oh,
not this weekend, but last weekend.
interesting.
It was a really busy weekend, so that would be a
Yeah.
really good weekend.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're doing a good job, I think, just from that observation. I thought that somebody had put birdhouses up there, because that's what they looked like, little
Oh.
weird, but, okay. Any other communications, and then,
One question I have, it says right here, the water department introduced Haskell and Howell Spring. Does that mean that we're using the springs now? Okay, when did that start?
It's been a little more than a month now, I think we put that in last month's, public works status report, that we had sent water.
So we're low in
Yeah.
water right now.
The demand is higher.
I wish we could tell people to use it sparingly.
anything else for good of the order? Okay, we will adjourn the regular meeting and proceed with a executive session in about 5-10 minutes. Okay?